Children of Lust. And that's actually in Belfast, and we had one song, and it's called River Section.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Upbeat. I think we actually used a public image drum beat, and that was it.
Oh, okay.
and a guitar with 3 strings on it, so we're kind of going for that public image / Joy Division thing.
Okay. So, and what happened with Southern Deathcore? Was that a goth? I mean, now would we say post-punk or goth?
It was actually officially termed positive punk before the Gothic tag. The Gothic tag was a joke. There was a guy called Andy McCullough. He's an anti-sex gang. He was a band called Sex Gang Children, and he lived in an old Gothic Brixton tenement building, and he used to play with PF and have tea parties, and we'd all go over there and like this little Gothic, I used to call him the Gothic Goblin, and all his followers with the Gothic chords. It was kind of a joke. It was like, you know, and he was a laugh, and then David Durrell from the NME picked it up, and like all of a sudden talked about Sex Gang Children, the followers being goths, and then the term came, and then off it went.
Okay.
It was an in kind of joke.
So you did that, which then became Deathcore?
So Southern Deathcore was its own separate band, and then that split up in March '83, and then I joined. We started Deathcore. We decided to grab the name, some essence of the name, because there was a lot of heat on Southern Deathcore, and we became Deathcore for a year. And I changed my name to Ian Lindsay. I was kind of angry with my father at the time, so I dropped my surname, and I worked through that. And then in 1984, in the Tube, we became the Cult. So it officially started January 3rd, 1984, we became the Cult.
Okay.
And the name stuck. We knew we weren't going to get too far with Deathcore.
Right. I could see that. So, what was the first album, and how did everything progress from there?
You talking about Deathcore? Oh, sorry, Southern Deathcore. Southern Deathcore.
Southern Deathcore.
Southern Deathcore made they made a compilation album after we disbanded. Deathcore, we made a few EPs, and then the Cult, we made a record probably about a year into it. We actually made a record for about 7 months into it. And it was pretty dilettante. It was a pretty amateurish, earnest effort. We had no clue what we were doing in the studio. Absolutely no idea.
Who was in the studio with you? Were you doing it yourself?
No, we had a producer called John Brand who produced some bands on Situation 2, which is a Beggars Banquet label. He produced Gene Loves Jezebel, and he was kind of like their go-to guy for production. So we started with a guy called Joe Julian, who produced Adam and the Ants very on. He did like some of the Xerox stuff, Young Parisians, and we thought, wow, because we love the Ants, early Ants, pre-Prince Charming Ants. Kings of the Wild Frontier is kind of the cut-off point, and we loved that. We loved Xerox was an incredible album, and it was Xerox, right?
I think so.
Xerox.
I used to see those guys at the music machine in Camden.
They were amazing, and so Joe Julian, and it just didn't work out. So we worked with John Brand, and we got the first album, The Cult, was called Dreamtime. And then we found that the Stranglers had the same title for their album about the same time. But, you know, we weren't Googling then, there was no Google.
Right.
You went to the record store and realised there was a band that had the same title.
Oops.
Yeah.
So how does your preparation in the studio, for singing in the studio, differ to your preparation for live? And